Has someone ever challenged you to something that they didn't know who are an expert at? If so, how did it turn out for you/them? Mine's kind of dumb, but I think it still counts. At work I'm kind of the Google Sheets expert and I make lots of tools for different departments to use. Enter new guy who needed to collect, aggregate and display a bunch of data. My boss was like, send Wish a calendar invite so you can tell her what you want and she'll set it up for you. New guy was having none of that and insisted he was going to do it himself. Well, a week later, he finally has this sheet that doesn't have half the information we need, and we have to have the numbers for the state by tomorrow. So my boss asks me to fix it and new guy is like, yeah, okay, that's not really possible. This is as good as it's going to get. 2 hours later, I send them both a fully functional and automated sheet that does everything we need, and we'll be able to use it indefinitely, which means next time, and every time, the stupid state report is due, it will already be done. New guy was like, I would have added that in if I'd had more time. New guy sucks. I don't understand these people that cannot admit that someone did something much better than they did, and compliment them. Plus, his excuse is basically admitting that his time management is. Thanks for figuring out Google Sheets, and helping everyone in your work. I once went to a museum with my sister and her friend, who I hadn't met before. We got to the Greek art bit and her friend started telling me how she was super into Greek myth, and I thought that was cool, because I was, unbeknownst to her, doing a master's in it at the time and also keeping a blog of myth retellings, which was pretty popular, and it was a relief to have something in common with this stranger. She then got weirdly haughty and told me she probably knew more myths than I did, so, being polite, I didn't challenge her on it and just asked her to tell me her favorite, so that we could have a conversation about it. She proceeded to tell me the myth of Daedalus and the Minotaur. I asked her how she'd heard of that one, because it's fairly obscure. She told me she'd read it on a viral blog post on a blog about mythology. It was my blog. How is Daedalus and the Minotaur obscure? I hear it in almost every mythology book I have. A buddy mine was at a concert in bad seats and started complaining about it via Twitter. All of a sudden the band starts reading some tweets and calls my friend up to sit on stage for a couple songs. They sit him at the piano and during the next song, they jokingly go, "Okay, piano solo." The crowd laughs for a second but then my buddy just starts jamming out, as he plays piano in his band. Talk about dream moment getting to play with your favorite band. Reminds me of an awesome YouTube video from a couple years back. In a Keith Urban concert, this young dude gets called up on stage since his GF was holding up a sign saying it's his birthday wish to play guitar with Keith. For those that don't know, Koo is an amazing guitar player. Anyway, the dude gets up there and Keith hands him his guitar. Pretty much everyone expecting either a choke job or a mediocre attempt. But the dude proceeds to freaking shred. Keith was like, WTF. And he immediately calls back the band, who had just gone on break, and they play the full song with the dude owning the all parts including the solo. Just an amazing gotcha moment. In front of provably 15k people. Basketball. I'm a very unassuming looking guy. 5 feet 8 inches, 150 pounds, not a tattoo to be found. But back in the day, I was pretty athletic and could hang in games with fringe D1/semi-pro guys. But I can't emphasize how much I didn't look like it at all. Anyway, in college, hanging out in someone's room, it came up that I play a bit and some dude I didn't know started running his mouth about how he could destroy me. Just wouldn't stop talking. I gave him every out, until it basically became personally offensive. Other guys were a bit tired of this hanging around, and they knew I could play, so we all trooped over to the gym, late as in the dead of winter, so we could settle things. 11-0 the first game. Not sure if we played after that, but I remember it was 11-0 because I made sure to not let the guy score. And I'm a pretty mellow guy and usually would have laid off and let him score a couple when it was clear that I was better, but this guy was a real asshole, so I just clamped down on him start to finish. I blocked a ton of his. He stopped hanging around nearly as much after that, so I was kind of a hero to the rest of the guys. Like St. Patrick. Drove that snake out of our nation. Edit. Now that I think of it, being a short, skinny white guy who didn't try to look like I was a player, every time I stepped onto a new court, I had every other person on the floor just automatically dismiss me. You get used to it. Respect, in this case, had to be 100% earned, every time. I remember one time, after college, I moved to a new city to start a new job. New co-workers were looking for a fourth guy to fill out their 3-on-3 team. They were not shy in expressing their doubts about me and how well I'd be able to hang with them. By the end of our first practice, they were telling me I should have played at the local D1 school. Edit, I wasn't that good, but it's the thought that counts. By our first game, they were clearing out when I had the ball. Those days are long gone and I've moved on to other interests, but I'm very thankful that I had those experiences. While I'd never claim I was an expert, I used to be pretty damn good at pool. My aunt and uncle had a pool table downstairs and my parents, for a variety of reasons, would go over regularly and spend all day there. There was nothing else for us, me and my brother, to do, so we just played pool all day for years. Eventually we got bored and saw that he had a book on trick shots, so we started doing that for fun. Never really mastered them, but they made for really good practice in understanding how to get the ball to do what you want. So anyway, for my buddy's 20th birthday he wanted to go to a pool hall and invited a ton of people. Then he told it was going to be a tournament, drinks for individual games, and a 50/50th type of deal for the winner. He gets half regardless because it was his birthday, insisted I come, and I caved eventually. Get there, first game, they break, and that was the only shot they got. Rest of mine were pretty similar. At the end I just looked at him, told you not to invite me. Found out after that a bunch of them had never even played pool before, felt pretty bad, so I took the money and bought everyone drinks with it. I have similar stories. I don't consider myself a great pool player. I played league pool for about 10 years, starting all the way out by dropping down to a 2 and bouncing up and down, getting better over time. But when you know people that can actually play well, you don't ever feel like you're really that great of a player. And then every once in a while somebody wants to challenge you at the table in a bar or wherever, and you suddenly remember that the majority of the population doesn't even know it's possible to control where the cue ball stops. I would never go as far to say that I'm a fencing expert, but I have been fencing casually for about 5 years total, and consider myself pretty good for someone who's casual. A new person came to our fencing practice and demanded of a few men that we do a King of the Hill style matchup. I couldn't tell exactly what it was, but I could smell the toxic behavior rolling off of him when everyone declined, but he continued to insist we do it. He somehow fixated on me, and I decided I'd give it a go on a normal 15-point bout. Initially I always fence one style, in order to test out my opponent before switching to a style to trump theirs. So the first few points I see him cheering himself on as he established a 1 to 2 point lead. By 4 to 2 in his favor, I already figured out all the flaws in his fencing style, and proceeded to get the next 10 points without losing one round. I could see the guy fuming at the end when I beat him 15 to 5. It was a good feeling. A neighbor on my block in Brooklyn challenged me to a pizza bake-off. I recently catered pizza for my daughter's school and word got around the neighborhood my pizza was pretty darn good. My first thought was, this guy is a Brooklyn native, my pizza will be compared to his. But there was something about him bragging that I couldn't resist the challenge. He talked up how pizza was in his blood, how his dad ran the pizza place around the corner years ago. I remained silent and let my skills answer for themselves. I got a buddy to let us use one of Baker's Pride ovens at his restaurant. We even had total strangers try our pizzas. Every last person chose my pizza over his. I never mentioned to him that I've worked in pizza places almost every day for the last 30 years. I never mentioned that when I'm not working at a pizza place I'm making pizzas at home at least once every 2 days. I never mentioned that at 9 years old I knew that I wanted to be a pizza man. Here I am 45 and getting ready to start my own pizza business.